Hey there everyone! On today's episode of DnD Horror Stories, we have a tale about a dungeon master and his girlfriend that give odd vibes to the players, and then they find out why. After that, we have a story about a player that has a bit of trouble living up to his own standards. But before we get into the stories, Alice has a very important question. I'm sure they will, Alice. I'm sure they will. But anyways, let's get into these stories. So, I discovered my DM is a convicted sex offender. By Reddit user, Tale of Dash. Just as a forewarning, there isn't a whole lot of D&D in this D&D horror story. This is less about the game we played, and more about the people that we played with. So, I'm a massive fan of tabletop RPGs, but it has been an awfully long time since I have managed to find a group to play with, especially when I gelled with enough to play with for more than a few sessions. Late last year, someone new joined my girlfriend's workplace. Someone who we would learn shared a lot of nerdy interest. We'll call this person Kai. Kai mentioned that her husband, who we will call Lyle, was an experienced dungeon master, and due to a falling out with their last group, didn't have anyone to currently play with. A party quickly formed shortly after, consisting of another couple and a mutual friend. At first, the experience was okay. I'd be lying if I said Lyle was not an entertaining DM. We were definitely having a lot of fun to start with. However, looking back on the whole experience, there are some things that were red flags. To list a few. Kai and Lyle mentioned that their favorite races to play were the small races, like goblins, gnomes, and in the case of FF14, Lalafels. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but my girlfriend mentioned that I like to play small races too, but didn't pick a Lalafel character because they were too uncanny and creepy looking. Kai got visibly upset at my girlfriend's remark and was short with her for the rest of the day at work. My girlfriend just shrugged it off and assumed Kai was just having a bad day. Kai was also obsessed with Lewis, a 9-year-old character on Bob's Burgers. Whenever she had the chance, she would talk about how much they have in common, even dressing up as her for Halloween, getting a tattoo of her silhouette, and making her FF14 character look like her. She was also vehemently anti-children. I'm sure lots of you know the sort. The kind of child-free person who will take any possible opportunity to talk about how awful kids are, who will insult people with children, calling them breeders and the like. Don't get me wrong, my girlfriend and I aren't planning to have kids either, but not because we hate them. It's just incredibly expensive to care for children in the United States. The best example of her attitude towards kids is this. We attended a hockey game together. Not really my thing, but a free night out is a free night out. And after the game, as we were walking back to our cars, Kai and Lyle loudly started joking about how much they hated children, in a massive crowd of hundreds of people all making their way out of the building, next to a lot of children. It was mortifying. Kai and Lyle weren't particularly affectionate with each other either. Kai would often look over Lyle's shoulder while he was looking up stats on a monster or rereading his notes, and we could tell he couldn't tell her, either due to cowardness or fear, to stop and mind her business. She wouldn't let him use a DM screen for this reason. Kai would get visibly upset with him if he didn't give her the items that she wanted, nerf her monster enough, give her enough opportunities to show off, or let her get the finishing kill. The best example of this is, when fighting a Hydra, Kai convinced Lyle to have us start with only one head, despite him wanting us to start with 3, and the rest of us knowing that it would completely trivialize the encounter. Anytime that Lyle would stand up to Kai, she would quickly inch herself away from him, act incredibly cold towards him for the rest of the session, or even go as far as to attempt to flirt with other male players in the group. The only time Kai ever showed affection, or rather love bombing, towards Lyle is when he was talking to another woman. Kai is incredibly insecure around other women, priding herself on being one of the few women in her Final Fantasy XIV guild, often talking about how her male guildmates hit on her and talk about how much they want to sleep with her. In the same breath, she would be incredibly harsh towards her guildmaster for posting selfies of herself for no reason. She would often critique my girlfriend for being stereotypically feminine, only to big herself up in the same sentence for not wearing makeup and playing video games. If you can't tell by now, Kai suffers from the other girls versus me syndrome. Kai and Lyle were dismissive about other DMs and sessions they've been involved with in the past. Nobody was a good enough DM, and I assumed that was because nobody else, aside from her husband, would placate her obnoxious behavior and bend to her will. The moment that stands out is when Kai attempts to get a magic book for her sorcerer, but badly failed the Arcana roll. Despite my character having absolutely no points in Arcana, I went to try the roll to help her out and rolled a natural 20, which for a rogue is pretty funny. We were joking and laughing at my dumbass bastard rogue with no knowledge of magic, somehow deciphering this ancient magical text. But Kai didn't find it funny at all. She was visibly upset her character failed and mine succeeded, despite my only having done it to help her out. Lyle had to place a hand on her leg and told her, "Don't feel bad." He then proceeded to read off a long list of powerful spells that she could learn from the book, things one would not normally be able to obtain or use until late game. We were level 4 at the time. I assumed that Kai was incredibly controlling, perhaps even abusive. Lyle didn't have any social media profiles, including a Reddit account, a Discord account, or a smartphone. He mostly relied on an old flip phone and didn't give out his number to people he considered friends. Lyle even mentioned quitting the FF14 a few years ago. This struck me as odd because he majored in computer science and was, for a lack of a better word, a huge nerd. Why wouldn't he have any of these stereotypical nerd things? Surely, his wife must be controlling and manipulating him. Was he in an abusive relationship? This is just the tip of the iceberg, but I don't want to turn this into a novel more than I already have. After a while, we ended up feeling very alienated from the group. I won't go too far into it, but Lyle also held quite a few problematic views on gender, not only misgendering me repeatedly, despite being constantly corrected, but making some pretty ignorant generalizations about my girlfriend and our relationship. All in all, this led us to feeling very alienated from the group, and our attitude was beginning to show. In our final session, we bowed out without saying goodbye because it had been a particularly awkward session, with Kai chatting up one of Lyle's friends the entire game. We had planned to type out a message saying thank you for all the fun, but that things weren't a good fit for us. Stuff like that. Before we even had a chance though, my girlfriend received a massive angry and ranting message about how disrespectful we were constantly being to Lyle, and that she wouldn't tolerate anyone being rude to her husband, despite the fact that she was constantly making cruel jabs towards him herself. The whole thing just felt wrong. So I did something I haven't done in a long time and went Googling to learn more about them, because something about their whole relationship just didn't sit right with us. Kai was pretty clean, with no real social media to speak of. But Lyle? The first result was for the sex offender registry in our state, with a photo of Lyle from a few months ago, around the time when the campaign first started. Not only that, but I found the governmental seizure list from the time of his arrest, which included 2 computers and an external hard drive. I shit you not, I felt time slow down around me. I felt intense fear and disassociation. My mind went completely blank. My girlfriend said that I uttered, babe, to get her attention. That I had genuine guttural fear and panic in my voice, a tone that she never heard from me before. So, it turned out that in 2016, Lyle was convicted of having child pornography on his computer. He has to go to the local sheriff's department every year to get his photo and profile updated on the state sex offender registry, and likely spend at least 2 years in prison for it. Suddenly, everything made sense. The reason why he wasn't on social media, his lack of an online presence. their rocky and unloving relationship, why they were obsessed with small fantasy races and cartoon children, everything. Even though this occurred 2 or 3 months ago, I'm still honestly shaken up by it all. We had Kai and Lyle over for dinner multiple times. We had these people in our home and considered them friends. We're still attempting to comprehend our feelings surrounding all of this. We should have searched for their names sooner. A few months ago, when this all went down, my girlfriend texted the majority of her previous coworkers, especially those with kids or grandkids, in case Lyle accompanies Kai to any staff parties with their children present. I have contacted the comic book and game and hobby stores that Lyle volunteers at, just due to the proximity he has with kids. And we obviously told the other party members of our findings, but we don't know what ever happened to the campaign. Unlike her husband, Kai does have multiple Reddit accounts and frequents the sub. I'm expecting either myself or my girlfriend to get some retaliation from this, but hopefully, this is the last we ever hear from them. TLDR, we got into a D&D game with a very standoffish and uncomfortable couple. We were eventually removed from the group, and upon Googling them, discovered that our DM was arrested for possession of child pornography 5 years ago, and is still on probation. Holy God, I can only imagine the feeling of finding something like that out about someone you spend a lot of time with. And the fact that this dude volunteered at comic and game stores, assumingly to run games around and for kids. Good on OP for contacting those stores and informing them about Lyle. Though, in all honesty, the owners of those stores should probably do that themselves whenever someone wants to volunteer to be around children. Plus, I'm sure that Lyle being there was probably some sort of violation of probation or whatever. Then there was Kai, who, in hindsight, was also creepy with her obsession of childlike characters. I feel dirty for just reading this story, and I can only imagine how OP and their girlfriend feel after playing D&D with these people. I think we need a kitty break after that one. Ah, that's much better. Now on to the next one. Frustrated Freddy, the Well-Meaning Hypocrite, by Reddit user Original Antigenic Sin. Gather around, friends, where the horror is light and there is frustration aplenty. Over the summer, I sought additional players for an ongoing campaign. Amongst the selected applicants was a player who rightfully observed that the legacy players could improve in communicating their schedules. A tale as old as time, or perhaps even older. Now, to the credit of my players, they have never been lazy or disengaged. They are simply slow to respond to anything. Here, however, they made a not-so-great first impression, as one of the players cancelled last minute and the other player failed to attend without warning, having slept through their alarm. The players in attendance voted to cancel, as the session was intended to serve as a trial for the newbies. This, dear friends, is where the observation was made, and where the player expressed his frustrations with the attendance. Moreover, when I suggested that we move his introduction to the campaign, he expressed frustration that he and the other new player were promised a set date for their arrival, so I made sure to condense the trial to a single session. The following week, we were set to try again, except Frustrated Freddy never showed up. Indeed, the player who complained about attendance failed to attend his own trial session. What's more, he slept through his alarm. Now, we were all empathetic, amused certainly, but still understanding. We opted to simply use the campaign sessions as a trial. Well, friends, here is where the frustration swells. Frustrated Freddy missed that session too. See, he informed me that he would be late as he had to schedule a COVID booster an hour before the session started. He did this so he could receive his booster earlier than when it was scheduled. Yes, he didn't need to reschedule. He simply wanted to receive it earlier. Okay, sure. He said he would be no more than an hour late. Only he wasn't. He responded to my inquiries 3 hours into that session, where he said that he would arrive whenever he could. I explained that perhaps it was best to move his introduction to the following week. Naturally, he expressed frustration about not being able to play. Not because of his absence, but because he wanted to play. We were nearing the end of the session, but he still wanted to play. The following week? Nope, nowhere to be seen. He missed it again by sleeping through his alarm. So I pulled frustrated Freddy into a call and politely explained that it was obvious that his schedule was opposed to the game. He explained that perhaps he was too aspirational in coordinating his schedule, but that he believed he could try to make it to the next session. Hearing that, I promptly advised that he looked for a game that supported his busy schedule. I almost reminded him of his advice to my players, but I stilled my words. No reason to make this adversarial. And with that, frustrated Freddy was gone. There were no arguments, no tears, no bitter words. Just frustration. Raw frustration. Wherever you are, frustrated Freddy, I hope you can exercise self-awareness the next time you offer criticism. Well, that was certainly a tale of the pot calling the kettle black. I can understand stuff happening last minute and a game getting cancelled, as it's just something that unfortunately happens from time to time. And I can understand that Freddy might have been, well, frustrated at the fact that his introduction to this group was cancelled in that way. But first impressions go both ways, and to come out and scold the other players that you've never met before about attendance right off the bat isn't really a good look. It's even worse when you proceed to do the exact same thing multiple times after that. So I would have to agree with the DM in this situation, of just letting bygones be bygones, and just going separate ways after this, as it seems the fates just didn't want it to be. But that will do it for today. Remember, if you have a story that you would like to be featured in a video, be sure to post it to the D&D Doge subreddit, or link it in the comments. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter, where I honestly mostly post cats. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may all of your rolls be natural 20s. Until next time.